Before we begin our story, please don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more, and drop a comment with your feedback on our stories. We'd love to hear your thoughts. The stars shimmered above Earth's capital, their distant glow a silent reminder of what was at stake. Ambassador Elias Carter stood on the balcony of the United Nations Stellar Embassy, staring at the vastness of space. The Galactic Council's summons had arrived days ago, their words formal yet unmistakably ominous: humanity is to stand trial for its history of violence. Elias had known this day would come. The moment humanity took its first steps beyond the solar system, it was inevitable that others would scrutinize its past. Now, as the appointed representative of his species, he bore the weight of Earth's entire future on his shoulders. He closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. The time for doubt was over. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was a marvel of architecture, an immense dome of crystalline panels that shimmered with the light of distant stars. The chamber's structure was neither entirely solid nor transparent, shifting in form as if it were alive. Representatives of hundreds of species sat in circular tiers, their eyes, sensors, and other forms of perception fixed upon the lone human standing at the center of the chamber. Elias adjusted his suit, the deep blue fabric lined with a subtle silver trim, a deliberate choice, designed to reflect both diplomacy and resilience. His gaze swept across the assembly, taking in the diverse array of beings. Some were humanoid, others utterly alien, gelatinous entities encased in containment fields, towering insectoids clicking their mandibles, amorphous beings shifting like liquid metal. Each species had its own history, its own struggles. And now, they judged his. The voice of the presiding arbiter, a towering, bioluminescent being known as ZYYTHKAL, echoed through the hall. Humanity stands accused of being an inherently violent species, ZYYTHKAL announced, its many eyes pulsing with cold light. Your history is stained with war, conquest, and destruction. We have reviewed your past: 2 world wars, genocides, nuclear devastation, and countless conflicts spanning millennia. Many among us believe you are too dangerous to be part of the Galactic Council. A murmur spread through the assembly, a mix of clicks, hisses, and electronic chimes. Elias took a deep breath. This was humanity's only chance to prove itself. Elias knew he couldn't simply dismiss the accusations. They were true, humanity's past was bloody. But it was also incomplete without context. He recalled his own grandfather's stories, of how war had shaped his family, of the lessons that were learned through hardship. He thought of his sister, a scientist working to develop clean energy solutions, of the millions of minds dedicated to peace, exploration, and knowledge. With respect, honored counselors, Elias began, his voice calm but firm, you see our past violence, but do you understand its context? You judge us by our history, but fail to see how we have changed. If war and suffering alone define a species, then tell me, how many of you sit here today because your ancestors fought for survival? A hush fell over the chamber. Some counselors looked at each other, uncertain. Elias pressed on. Yes, we have waged wars. Yes, we have made mistakes, horrific ones. But from those ashes, we learned. We built societies that value peace, cooperation, and justice. We ended slavery, abolished tyrannies, and established laws that protect the weak. Every conflict taught us a lesson, and we adapted. ZYYTHKAL's eyes dimmed slightly, considering his words. And yet, even now, your people maintain fleets of warships and weapons capable of annihilating worlds. Elias met the Arbiter's gaze without flinching. Because we are not naive. The galaxy is not without danger. There are those who would enslave, who would destroy. We do not seek war, but we will not fall to conquest. And let me ask you this, how many of your own species came to this council unarmed? A tense silence followed. Many present had fought wars before achieving peace. Some still maintained massive military forces in case old threats resurfaced. A counselor from the Zorthan Dominion, a reptilian species known for their long history of expansionist conquests, leaned forward. You speak of lessons learned, but history repeats itself, does it not? How can we trust that your species will not fall back into its violent ways? Elias exhaled slowly. Because we have seen the cost of war. The devastation. The loss. And we choose to be better. That is what defines humanity, not our past, but our capacity for change. Outside the Grand Chamber, unseen forces moved in the shadows. Not everyone wanted humanity to be part of the council. The Kveth Syndicate, a powerful faction that profited from war and chaos, had no interest in seeing humanity join the interstellar community as a force for stability. Whispered deals, hidden agendas, and covert threats loomed just beyond the surface of the trial. Back on Earth, political tensions ran high. Some factions believed that joining the Galactic Council would mean subjugation, a loss of independence. Others saw it as humanity's rightful place among the stars. Protests erupted in major cities, debates filled the networks, and the world held its breath, waiting for the Council's decision. The chamber remained quiet for several long moments before ZYYTHKAL spoke again. The Council will deliberate. You will receive our judgment soon. Elias nodded, stepping back. Humanity's fate now rested in their hands. As he exited the chamber, his personal communicator buzzed. A secure transmission from Earth. He hesitated for a moment, then answered. The voice on the other end was grim. Ambassador, we have a problem. There's been an assassination attempt on one of our key diplomats. Someone is trying to sabotage this trial. Elias's jaw tightened. This was no longer just a debate about humanity's past. It was a fight for its future. One thing was certain, whatever the verdict, humanity would endure. As it always had. Elias rushed to his quarters, his mind racing. If someone was targeting Earth's representatives, then the stakes were even higher than he had imagined. He opened a secure line to Earth's intelligence liaison, Director Helena Vaughn. We've identified the assassin, Vaughn said, her expression tense on the holographic display. A hired agent, linked to the Kveth Syndicate. We suspect they want to push humanity into a defensive war, making the Council see us as aggressors. Elias clenched his fist. Can you track them down? We're working on it. But there's more. Some of our encrypted diplomatic messages were intercepted. Someone within the Council is feeding information to our enemies. Betrayal. The trial wasn't just a test of humanity's past, it was a battlefield in its own right. Elias straightened, determination burning in his eyes. Then we need to fight this on two fronts. We win the trial with words, and we stop our enemies before they can destroy everything we've worked for. The war for humanity's future had just begun. As the council deliberated, Elias set a plan in motion. Earth's intelligence teams worked tirelessly, unraveling the web of deceit within the council. Allies were needed, beings from other species who had suffered under the machinations of the Kveth Syndicate. If humanity was to survive this trial, they would need to expose the true orchestrators of galactic chaos. Time was running out. The verdict would soon be delivered, and with it, the fate of an entire world. Days later, the council gathered to announce their decision. The chamber was silent, the weight of the moment palpable. ZYYTHKAL stood, eyes pulsing with unreadable emotion. Humanity's fate has been decided. Elias stood rigid, awaiting the words that would shape the course of history. But before ZYYTHKAL could speak, an alarm blared through the chamber. Holographic displays lit up with emergency alerts. The Kveth Syndicate had launched an attack, not on Earth, but on a neutral world, a blatant act of war meant to shatter galactic stability. In that moment, the trial was no longer just about humanity's past, it was about the future of the galaxy itself. Counselors exchanged hurried glances, the order of the day forgotten. The fate of humanity remained undecided. And the war for the stars had just begun. The great hall erupted into chaos. Counselors shouted over each other in a cacophony of languages, their voices blending into a dissonant roar. Holographic screens flickered with images of the attack, smoldering cities, fleeing civilians, Kveth warships descending like shadows over a defenseless world. ZYYTHKAL's bioluminescent form flared with urgency. Order. We must restore order. But the damage was done. The Syndicate's move was calculated, an act of war designed to destabilize the Council's proceedings. Elias's mind raced. If the Council fractured now, humanity's trial would be lost in the turmoil. Worse, Earth could be blamed for the chaos, framed as the instigator. He turned to his aide, Commander Lyra Voss, a seasoned diplomat from the Martian colonies. "We need to act now," she whispered. "If we don't prove humanity isn't the threat here, we'll be scapegoated." Elias nodded. He stepped forward, raising his voice above the din. "Counselors, listen to me." To his surprise, the chamber quieted, if only slightly. Even in crisis, they still watched the human. "This attack proves one thing," Elias declared. "The real danger isn't humanity, it's those who would manipulate this council to justify war. The Kveth Syndicate doesn't fear us because we're violent. They fear us because we stand for peace." A murmur rippled through the assembly. Some scoffed, but others, especially those from species who had suffered under the Syndicate's schemes, leaned in, listening. ZYYTHKAL's voice cut through the tension. "Ambassador Carter, what are you proposing?" Elias met the arbiter's gaze. "Let us help stop this. Earth's fleets are ready. We will stand with the Council against the Kveth, not as defendants, but as allies." Silence. Then, From the back of the chamber, a deep, resonant voice spoke, a Tarkin warlord, his armored scales glinting under the starlight. "And why should we trust you?" Elias didn't hesitate. "Because if we wanted war, we wouldn't be standing here asking for a chance. We'd already be fighting." The chamber held its breath. Then, ZYYTHKL spoke. "The Council will reconvene in one standard cycle. Until then, humanity's fate remains suspended." It wasn't an acquittal. But it wasn't condemnation, either. As Elias turned to leave, a shadowy figure approached, a Velm scientist, one of the few who had openly supported humanity's case. "They're watching you," the Velm whispered. "Be careful." Elias nodded. The game had changed. And the next move would decide everything. The attack on the neutral world had been a distraction. While the Council scrambled to respond, Elias and his team uncovered the Syndicate's true objective, a hidden strike force, poised to seize control of Earth's orbital defenses. If they succeeded, humanity would appear to be the aggressors, justifying a full-scale galactic war. Elias transmitted urgent orders back to Earth. "Prepare for an attack. And get me a secure line to every fleet commander who's ever doubted the Syndicate." Lyra frowned. "You're rallying a coalition." "No," Elias said, his voice steel. "I'm starting a rebellion." The final battle for humanity's future was about to begin. And this time, the galaxy would see who the real monsters were. Elias paced in his quarters, the weight of the galaxy pressing down on him. His thoughts were consumed by the scope of the task ahead. The Syndicate strike force was hidden somewhere in Earth's orbital defense grid. If they gained control, Earth's fleets could be turned against the Council, making humanity appear as the aggressor in a war they didn't want. Lyra stood at the doorway, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. "You really think you can trust the people you're bringing in?" Elias stopped and turned to face her. "I don't have a choice. The Syndicate thrives on chaos, and right now, we need a coalition that doesn't see Earth as just another target. We need people who understand what's at stake. But many of them have their own agendas. The Tarkin are warrior caste, they'll want to fight first, talk later. The Veln are scientists and philosophers, they'll hesitate. And even the ones who support us might turn on us if the Syndicate has infiltrated too deep." He nodded grimly. "I know. But I trust them more than I trust the Syndicate." The moment the transmission ended, Elias opened a secure line to the fleet commanders he trusted, those who had been silent for too long, waiting for someone to lead. The truth was, there was no clear way forward. His mission now was about survival, not diplomacy. But survival could open the door to something greater, a place for humanity within the Galactic Council. Back on Earth, chaos had erupted. Government factions were split between siding with the Galactic Council or rejecting it outright. The assassination attempt on one of the key diplomats was the first sign of deep sabotage. But it was only the beginning. The Syndicate's influence had burrowed so deeply within the ranks of Earth's own government that no one knew who to trust. In the midst of this turmoil, Director Helena Vaughn faced her own crisis. The encrypted diplomatic messages they had intercepted earlier had been a red herring, a series of decoys meant to throw off suspicion. What was worse, the Syndicate had managed to plant one of their own operatives inside Earth's Intelligence Bureau. Helena felt a cold rush of dread as the weight of the discovery hit her. "They've been inside us this whole time." She immediately sent a coded warning to Elias, but it was already too late. The Syndicate knew they were onto them. The council chambers were eerily silent as the factions tried to regroup after the Syndicate's attack. Representatives from every corner of the galaxy whispered among themselves, their eyes flickering toward Elias. The human ambassador was standing at the center of the storm, and for a fleeting moment, he felt the full weight of his responsibility. The Kveth Syndicate had already begun its next move. Using the chaos to their advantage, they had planted misinformation across multiple worlds, falsely implicating Earth in covert military actions. The galactic community was on the brink of collapse. But Elias was determined to show them another truth. "We have been wronged," Elias said, addressing the council once more. His voice was steady but heavy with resolve. "The Kveth Syndicate is using humanity as a scapegoat. But I will prove that Earth is more than capable of standing alongside you in peace, not war." Zythl's eyes glowed with skepticism, but Elias saw a flicker of something deeper, a willingness to listen, at least for now. The question was, could he rally the council in time to stop the Syndicate from seizing control of the galaxy? Just as Elias prepared to speak again, the silence was shattered by a blinding explosion. The chamber shook, and the lights flickered out, plunging them into darkness. The Syndicate had struck again, this time within the heart of the Galactic Council itself. A coordinated attack on the Council's central hub sent shockwaves across the political landscape. It was clear now, the Kveth Syndicate was not just manipulating the situation. They were staging an all-out assault on the very foundation of galactic peace. Elias's heart pounded in his chest as he watched the security feeds, images of battle drones and Syndicate shock troops flooding the hallways. The momentary silence had ended, and now the galaxy was at war. But Elias had no intention of letting the Syndicate win this battle. "We need to move now," he urged Lyra, who had been coordinating the emergency defense efforts. "There's still a chance to stop this before it spirals out of control. We must protect the Council and ensure the Syndicate doesn't turn this into a full-scale war." Lyra nodded. "The Tarkin are already mobilizing. But we'll need more allies, more than just the Council factions." "I've already made contact with the Veln," Elias replied. "They're hesitant, but they'll come around. And the Martians, they'll fight for us. We've all seen the Syndicate's cruelty." With the threat of galactic war hanging in the balance, Elias knew the time for diplomacy was running out. The battle was no longer about convincing the galaxy of humanity's worth. It was about survival. And, if they could survive, perhaps a new path forward for humanity in the stars. The battle for the heart of the Galactic Council was underway, but Elias wasn't just fighting against the Kveth Syndicate, he was fighting against the clock. The Council's capital was a sprawling, multi-tiered station orbiting a dead star, with its heart situated in a crystalline dome that housed the most powerful beings in the galaxy. The Syndicate's forces were relentless, sweeping through the corridors, eliminating any opposition that stood in their way. Elias and Commander Lyra Voss, along with a small contingent of Earth's elite defense forces, moved swiftly through the corridors. His mind was racing. If the syndicate succeeded in disrupting the Council's proceedings, it would fracture any hope of unity in the galaxy. Peace would become a distant dream, and Earth would be left vulnerable, caught in the crossfire of an all-out war. Lyra leaned in, whispering urgently. "Ambassador, the Tarkin forces are coming in from the east. They'll need backup in 20 minutes, but we need to deal with the Syndicate Command Center first. If we can cut off their leadership, the rest will fall apart." Elias nodded, his jaw set. "We're not just cutting them off. We're exposing the Syndicate for what they truly are, manipulators, not warriors." They arrived at the Syndicate Command Center, a heavily fortified chamber located deep within the heart of the station. Elias's pulse quickened as they approached. The room was a fortress, and every inch was rigged with traps. But they had no choice but to go in. The door opened, and Elias saw the leader of the Syndicate's forces, a tall, imposing figure clad in dark armor, his eyes glinting with malicious intent. The Syndicate's general, Vezkal, a former warlord who had been exiled from his homeworld for his violent tendencies, now stood as the orchestrator of galactic chaos. "Ambassador Elias Carter," Vezkal's voice was like a low growl, "you are too late. The Council is already on the brink of collapse. You should have stayed out of this." Elias stood tall, his voice steady. "It's never too late to fight for what's right. You've been manipulating the galaxy, using fear to control those who are too weak to see the truth." Vezkal chuckled darkly. "You're deluded. I am not the one who needs to fear. You are." Before he could react, a massive blast shook the room, sending a surge of energy through the walls. The Syndicate had just launched another attack, this time, on a nearby planetary defense station. Earth's defenses were under siege. Lyra turned to Elias, her face pale. "We need to stop them. Now." As the Syndicate's forces clashed with the Tarkin and other allies within the Council's halls, Elias knew that every second counted. But just as it seemed all hope was lost, a new alliance emerged, one that could turn the tide in their favor. From the shadows, the Veln arrived. At first, their presence was almost imperceptible, silent figures, their forms flickering in and out of view like ephemeral ghosts. They were the galaxy's philosophers, thinkers, and scientists, but in the heat of war, they had become something far more lethal, a hidden force. The Syndicate had underestimated them. Elias had reached out to their leader, a soft-spoken Veln scientist named Hrilith, and convinced them to join the fight. Their technology, developed over centuries of contemplation and study, could prove the turning point. Hrilith spoke quietly, his voice carrying the weight of their centuries-old wisdom. "We have observed the chaos from afar, Ambassador Carter. The Kveth Syndicate's rise to power was not by strength, but by deceit. They have fractured the natural order, manipulating entire species to gain control of the galaxy. We cannot allow that to continue." With the Veln's advanced cloaking technology, Elias's team moved in undetected. They were able to strike at key Syndicate command centers, disrupting their operations across the Council station. Their success was a momentary victory, but Elias knew the Syndicate wouldn't back down. The Veln's support was pivotal, without them, humanity would have been overwhelmed. But the fight was far from over. Elias stood on the edge of the observation deck, gazing out at the galactic expanse. The battle raged on, but something was different now. The Kveth Syndicate, which had once seemed invincible, was beginning to falter. Their influence within the council had been significantly weakened, and despite their earlier strength, they were now on the defensive. But the true battle was not won yet. Elias knew that, eventually, they would need to confront the Syndicate's mastermind, the shadowy figure who pulled the strings from behind the scenes. Suddenly, Lyra's voice crackled through his communicator. "Ambassador, we've just intercepted an encrypted transmission. The Syndicate's leader is making his move." Elias's heart skipped a beat. "Where?" "On the neutral world," Lyra replied, her voice urgent. "The very world that started the initial crisis. They're planning something catastrophic, an act of war that will collapse the last of the Council's alliances. If we don't stop them now, it's over." Elias clenched his fists. "I'll get there first. No more waiting. We'll take the fight to them." As the team rushed to prepare for their final assault on the Syndicate's stronghold, Elias's mind turned to Earth's fate. Humanity had already been through so much: wars, betrayals, and threats from within and beyond their homeworld. But now, it wasn't just about survival. It was about proving that Earth had earned its place in the galaxy, not as an aggressor, but as a beacon of resilience, a species willing to fight for peace, no matter the cost. The final confrontation was set to take place on the neutral world, the heart of the Syndicate's operations. With all of the galaxy's factions mobilized, the final battle would be fought not just with weapons, but with ideals. As Elias and his team descended upon the Syndicate's command post, the air was thick with tension. This would be the moment that decided everything. The Syndicate's leader, HFY, the shadowy mastermind behind the chaos, waited in his lair. Elias knew that defeating him would not only stop the Syndicate's rampage but would also determine humanity's place in the galaxy. The stakes were higher than ever before. Elias stepped forward, the final showdown imminent. His heart pounded. He knew what needed to be done. For humanity. For the galaxy. For peace. The final confrontation had arrived. Elias stood at the front of his team, his heart pounding in his chest. The tension in the air was palpable, thick with the weight of every decision that had led them here. They had fought through betrayal, subterfuge, and deception, all the while striving for one thing: peace. But as they made their way into the heart of the Syndicate's stronghold on the neutral world, it was clear that this battle would not be won with weapons alone. HFY, the leader of the Kveth Syndicate, stood at the center of his control room, an imposing figure cloaked in dark armor. His eyes glinted with malice, but there was something else in them: fear. "You think you can stop me, human?" HFY sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. "You've already lost. The Council is fractured, divided. You will never unite the galaxy. You'll never." "Enough." Elias's voice rang out, loud and resolute. "The galaxy doesn't need your chaos. It needs unity. It needs peace. And I'm going to make sure it gets it." With that, Elias took a step forward, his eyes locked on HFY. Behind him, the leaders of the Veln, the Tarkin, and other species who had joined the fight stood as a testament to what humanity and the galaxy could accomplish when they worked together. The final battle wasn't about firepower. It wasn't about who had the strongest fleet, the sharpest weapons, or the most powerful technology. It was about the strength of the ideals they represented. For too long, the Kveth Syndicate had thrived on manipulation, deception, and fear. But the forces that stood before HFY Story embodied something far greater, the shared will to protect the innocent, to safeguard peace, and to build a future free from tyranny. HFY Story's hand hovered over a control panel, ready to unleash the chaos that would undo everything they had worked for. But Elias's voice stopped him cold. "Your reign of terror is over," Elias said, his voice unwavering. "The galaxy is no longer afraid of you." HFY Story hesitated, his eyes narrowing. He knew the fight was slipping away from him. Despite his army's strength, despite his plans for galactic control, the tide had turned. The people of the galaxy, the very species he had manipulated, were rising against him. And humanity, once viewed with suspicion and distrust, had emerged as the beacon of that resistance. "You think you've won," HFY Story snarled, "but even if I fall, the seeds of war will remain. There will always be those who want power." Elias's eyes softened, but his resolve was as strong as ever. "Maybe. But we will fight. We will fight for the future. And we will fight together." In that moment, HFY Story's control center erupted in a wave of energy, a desperate last attempt to destroy the unity they had forged. But the combined forces of the Tarkin, Velm, and other allied species swiftly neutralized the threat. HFY Story was captured, his ambitions shattered. The galaxy stood at the precipice of a new dawn. In the aftermath of HFY Story's defeat, the Council reconvened. The Syndicate, its power broken, was dismantled, and the leaders responsible for the chaos were brought to justice. The galaxy's fractured alliances were mended, and a new era of cooperation and peace began to take shape. Elias stood at the heart of the Great Hall once more, this time not as a lone voice in the wilderness, but as a symbol of humanity's strength and resilience. The trial that had once threatened to decide their fate was now a distant memory. Humanity had earned its place among the stars, not because of its military might, but because it had shown the galaxy its capacity for growth, unity, and peace. Today, ZYYTHKAL, the presiding arbiter, spoke, his voice carrying across the assembly, "We stand united, not just in the defense of the galaxy, but in the pursuit of a future where all species can live in harmony." Humanity has proven itself not as a warmonger, but as a force for peace. The assembled beings from all corners of the galaxy nodded in agreement. The galaxy, once torn by conflict, was now beginning to heal. And at the center of it all stood Elias Carter, the ambassador who had saved humanity's future. As the delegates returned to their homes, Elias looked out across the stars. He knew the road ahead would be long, filled with challenges and uncertainties. But humanity had made its mark. They were no longer seen as the violent species of the past, but as the architects of the future. And in the quiet of the night, as the stars shimmered above, Elias Carter knew one thing for certain: the war for the future wasn't over, but they had won the most important battle. The battle for hope. Humanity had earned its place among the stars. And together, they would shape a new era, one of peace, unity, and understanding.